at this Kelsey Mitchell shit. I'm gonna be honest with you, bro. I'm sick of it. The girl didn't score a single point in the second half, and all she do is jack up shots. I've seen more than enough. Either Kelsey Mitchell and Stephanie White need to go, or Kate.
That was the response from fans, basketball analysts, and almost everyone who watched the game unfold. But now, the discussion has moved far beyond ordinary frustration. According to Sophie Cunningham, Caitlin Clark's teammate, one of her strongest supporters on the court, and the player who has defended her more than anyone else on the roster, there may be a much bigger reason behind the Indiana Fever's offensive struggles. Cunningham has shared information that changes the way many people view the confusing possessions fans have questioned all season. The biggest claim is that head coach Stephanie White instructed players during games to purposely avoid getting the ball into Caitlin Clark's hands.
Kelsey Mitchell, let's get into.
This is the part that has captured everyone's attention. Sophie Cunningham wasn't simply passing along gossip or repeating something she had heard. She pointed directly to concerns that fans have noticed throughout the season. The slow offensive movement, the many plays where Caitlin Clark appeared completely open but never received a pass, and the confusing possessions that left viewers shaking their heads are now part of a much larger debate. According to Cunningham, those moments were not simply caused by missed reads or poor communication. She suggested they came from specific coaching instructions. If that is true, it raises major questions about what has been happening on the Indiana Fever bench. What makes her comments even more important is how detailed they were. She was not speaking generally about chemistry problems, offensive systems, or coaching adjustments. She avoided vague answers and instead pointed directly at head coach Stephanie White, claiming players were given directions that resulted in Caitlin Clark being intentionally left out of important defensive possessions. That is an extremely serious accusation. Conversations about shot selection, rotations, or coaching decisions happen all the time in professional basketball, but suggesting that a coach deliberately reduced the involvement of one of the league's biggest stars is something completely different. It changes the discussion from normal basketball struggles into a larger question about whether coaching decisions may have limited one of the WNBA's most valuable and popular players. If the claim is accurate, it would explain many of the confusing moments fans have watched throughout the season. More importantly, it would force people to ask difficult questions about the team's direction and what has really been happening behind the scenes.
She wouldn't even throw the ball to her own shadow because she's so scared of it leaving her hands. She thinks she's going to go into cardiac arrest if the ball leaves her hand.
What gives Sophie Cunningham's comments so much attention is the role she plays in this situation. She is not an anonymous voice making claims from outside the organization, nor is she someone repeating information from another source. Cunningham has been inside the team every single day. She has shared the locker room, attended every practice, participated in film sessions, and experienced everything happening around the team firsthand. Since Caitlin Clark joined Indiana, Cunningham has remained one of her strongest public supporters. Whenever Clark faced criticism, Cunningham was often one of the first teammates willing to defend her openly. While others stayed silent, she consistently supported Clark in interviews and in front of the media. That history makes these latest comments impossible to overlook. Players usually avoid discussing internal team matters because doing so can create problems inside the organization. Most choose to protect the team publicly and leave disagreements behind closed doors. Cunningham decided to do the opposite. By speaking publicly, she risks creating tension and placing her own position within the organization under pressure. Choosing to take that risk suggests she believes these concerns are important enough to share regardless of the consequences. Whether people believe her or disagree with her, one thing is certain. Her comments have placed even greater attention on the Indiana Fever and created more questions about what may have been happening throughout the season.
And Stephanie White and Kelsey are like, okay, Kelsey, we got to get Kelsey hers too. And now it's Kelsey Mitchell's turn. It's just like, it's nasty. This Indiana Fever organization.
At the same time, it is important to be clear about what is actually being claimed. If Sophie Cunningham's statement is correct, then this issue goes far beyond missed passes or simple offensive mistakes. The allegation suggests players were given instructions that directly affected how often Caitlin Clark touched the basketball. If a professional coaching staff intentionally encouraged players to avoid passing to one of its most dangerous offensive players, the consequences would be enormous. In that case, many of the possessions fans questioned throughout the season could no longer be explained as normal mistakes or poor decisions. Instead, they would raise serious concerns about the team's overall strategy and whether those coaching choices prevented the franchise from reaching its full potential. The game footage has only added more attention to the debate. Fans and analysts have repeatedly highlighted possessions where Clark was clearly open and ready for the ball, yet the offense moved in another direction. Those plays became a major talking point because they happened often enough for people to notice a repeated pattern. According to the analysis surrounding this discussion, the film appears to support many of those concerns. Analysts have carefully reviewed possession after possession, asking why obvious passing opportunities were ignored. Their argument is not simply that players made mistakes. They believe the same situations continued throughout the season often enough to deserve serious attention. That is why many Indiana Fever fans have become so frustrated. The possessions that seemed confusing at the time are now being viewed in a completely different way. Analysts continue breaking down every sequence, asking whether those decisions were simply basketball mistakes or signs of something much bigger taking place behind the scenes.
Oh, like just not passing it, just refusing to pass it. This ball could have been passed a long time ago, Kelsey. This ball could have been passed a long time ago.
According to the analysis being presented, the examples were not based on one possession or a single game alone. Instead, the analyst highlighted several different plays where Caitlin Clark was clearly open, in good position, and ready to receive the basketball. Even so, the pass consistently went in another direction. Those repeated moments have become one of the biggest talking points because they did not happen just once. Fans and analysts have continued pointing to the same type of possessions throughout the season, arguing that the pattern became too noticeable to ignore. Looking back at those plays now, many people believe they deserve a much closer examination than they first received.
To Damiris Dantas rolling to the rim. Give up the ball. The pocket is right there. You see the lane. You see the pocket. Throw the ball. But you want to keep dribbling it and dribbling it. Like, come on.
This is where Sophie Cunningham's comments completely change the discussion. Normally, when fans watch a player ignore an open teammate, take a difficult shot, or drive into traffic instead of making the simple pass, the first assumption is that the player simply made a poor basketball decision or tried to do too much alone. That has been a common criticism throughout the season, especially during several confusing offensive possessions. In those moments, responsibility naturally falls on the player with the ball. But Cunningham's statement introduces another possibility. If what she says is true, then some of the decisions fans questioned may never have been individual choices in the first place. Instead of isolated mistakes or poor judgment, they may have been part of a larger team strategy. Viewed from that perspective, the entire conversation changes. Instead of blaming one player for passing up an open teammate, attention shifts toward the coaching staff and the decisions made from the bench. People begin asking whether several players were simply following the same instructions rather than making independent choices on the court.
She's out there by herself. It's literally a circus when this girl is out there, man. She's in her own world, like she's dribbling in a mirror.
This is exactly why Sophie Cunningham's comments have changed the way many people now look back at the entire season. Every confusing possession, every moment where Caitlin Clark stood wide open but never received the basketball, and every offensive sequence that left fans wondering what they had just watched now seems to fit into one larger discussion. According to the claim, players were instructed not to get the ball into Clark's hands. The game film, which analysts carefully reviewed one possession after another, does not simply point toward random selfish decisions by individual players. Instead, many believe it shows a repeated pattern that looks more like players carrying out instructions than making isolated mistakes on their own.
You got Angel Reese celebrating, blocking your shot. I mean, this girl just don't want to pass the goddamn ball, man. It's ridiculous watching Kelsey.
The focus now turns directly towards Stephanie White because Sophie Cunningham's statement places the Indiana Fever head coach at the center of one of the biggest coaching accusations the WNBA has seen in years. At the same time, situations like this deserve careful evaluation because stories this serious should be examined before emotions take over. The real question is what it would mean if a head coach actually instructed players to avoid passing to one specific teammate during games. Basketball has seen coaching disagreements, locker room problems, and conflicts with star players across the NBA, the WNBA, and leagues around the world. Those situations are not unusual in professional sports. However, a coach intentionally telling players to leave their own biggest offensive weapon out of the offense would be something entirely different. That would go far beyond a questionable coaching style or an offensive system that does not fit the roster. It would become an accusation of intentionally limiting the team's own success.
This team is a joke. This coach is a joke. Kelsey Mitchell wants it to be about her, and if she's not making...
The next question naturally becomes motivation because that is what everyone following this story wants to understand. Why would any head coach tell players not to pass to Caitlin Clark? What basketball reason or team strategy could possibly support that kind of decision? From a basketball standpoint, there is no obvious explanation. No offensive system, defensive adjustment, or game situation normally calls for intentionally taking the ball away from your most productive offensive player. If basketball itself cannot explain the decision, then people begin looking elsewhere for answers. The explanation suggested through Sophie Cunningham's comments points toward one of the most uncomfortable parts of professional sports. Personal pride, internal politics, and power struggles can sometimes become part of the environment when a player's influence grows so large that it begins to overshadow the organization itself.
It's like Caitlin Clark goes off in the first quarter, and then Stephanie White and Kelsey are like, okay, Kelsey, we got to get Kelsey hers too. And now it's Kelsey.
This is where Sophie Cunningham's comments also change the way people evaluate Kelsey Mitchell's role in many of those possessions. If Stephanie White truly instructed players not to pass to Clark, then Mitchell controlling the ball was not simply the result of individual selfishness. Instead, it happened inside a coaching system that either accepted or encouraged that style of play. Mitchell would not have been ignoring instructions to find Clark if those instructions were never being given. It is also possible that players were operating under a completely different message from the coaching staff. That does not remove every responsibility from Mitchell because professional players are still expected to make smart decisions, move the ball correctly, and recognize open teammates regardless of the system. But it does add important context. It also moves much of the attention toward the place Sophie Cunningham's comments ultimately point, the head coach. Her remarks have now become part of a much larger public discussion. Fans have debated these same possessions all season, analysts continue reviewing the game film, and the Indiana Fever organization is now facing questions that will not disappear easily. What makes this situation different is that the claim does not come from an anonymous social media account or an unconfirmed rumor. It comes from a teammate who shared the locker room, attended practices, witnessed events firsthand, and still decided to speak publicly despite knowing the possible consequences.